Let's now shift into more advice since this is a Thanksgiving episode. Someone's having a really bad time this holiday season, maybe first Thanksgiving without a loved one, maybe without a job, something. Can you give them some advice to remember that today's a different type of day and hopefully it sets momentum going forward?
Sure. I mean, as we've discussed before, I lost my father in 2020, and I've had a lot of Thanksgivings without him since then. I mean, I could just direct you to anything Andrew Garfield says on grief. He's been going viral on that. But it truly is remembering that they're part of you, remembering that the person you are, if you have someone that you care about that's no longer with you, whether they're alive or not, there's a falling out that you may not even remember the reasons for now, right? Like sometimes you just remember the feeling you had and not the reasons aren't important anymore. Eh, I think knowing that part of that who you are is a result of the relationships you've had and the impact they've had on you.
We are bringing back a familiar voice or face, depending on where you're catching this week's episode of A Mental Health Break. We're bringing back Renz. If you missed his first episode, head to the description. Super resilient and inspirational in the first episode. Coming at us with another lens today. Renz, thanks for making time to come back.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Vince. Thank you for having me, brother.
Then no problem. The pleasure's mine, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another show, continuing to make this show a top 10 show in the entire world. My name is Vincent A. Lancy, and I'm honored to have delivered another show today with a guest who loved our audience so much he was willing to come back for a second time. He's got a great book. He does a lot for his communities. He's over in the Miami area. Renz, catch us up from the first show. If we missed it, share a little bit of your mental health story from wherever you feel comfortable.
Sure. Well, you mentioned the book. So in terms of the book, by the way, this is a great book coach and podcast coach that we're
Thank
talking
you.
to here. So highly recommend him. You might see my review if you go on his website. So the book still, which is right here, has become since that time an Amazon bestseller, number one in multiple categories, as well as an award-winning author from the International Latino Book Awards by Empowering Latino Cultures, co-founded by Edward James Olmos. It's one of the five biggest book awards in the U.S. right now, which is incredibly important because we need to have immigrant voices, Latino voices heard, not over anybody, but alongside with. And to me, it's a great honor for that. It was a honorable mention in Best Poetry Book of the Year and Best Cultural and Community Book of the Year, as well as a silver medalist for Best Audio Book of Poetry of the Year. So the book is doing really well. I'm planning to, while working on other projects, other books, I'm planning on trying to take it internationally, having conversations with the Durand bookstore in Notting Hill, around the Notting Hill area in London and other places in South America. So let's see what happens.
Hey,
In in terms of resiliency, I was sharing with Vince, and I'm happy to share with the audience that in May, my position was eliminated at my corporate job because they needed a number of millions of dollars in cost savings, but better me than my team. I have found it a bit difficult to navigate at the beginning because I know that I'm good at what I do, but because I'm not currently doing it, you start to forget and you start to question yourself. And you have to remember that you can't take a situational thing and make it personal. Does that make sense? So we're in the middle of an election year. We are afraid of a recession. Everybody's being more fiscally conservative. So I keep getting told, let's check in next year. You may be overqualified, or I wish I would have met you a year and a half ago, or but it is what it is. All you have to do is know that you can adapt and move forward. So I did want to share that because of the nature of this podcast.
I'm sure there are many people, including myself, who have had enormous challenges finding jobs. I often compare Indeed and LinkedIn even now to the black hole, where if you're not a top 10 quickest applicant, when you see 100 people applied, how much time do you think the recruiting manager has? Realistically, how many of those 100 are they going to go through when the best candidate may be at 80, 85, 90? You also touched on before the show, we were talking controlling things you can control. I know that's challenging as well. How have you been able to integrate that in your way of thinking?
Oh man, I've been practicing gratitude every day, but so my girlfriend is a huge believer in the universe conspiring with you to get
Hold
you what you
on,
want.
that's new.
Yes,
Girlfriend
I have
news.
a
All
girlfriend.
right.
Ah,
Okay.
yay, woo. No, she's great person. She's from Turkey. Her name is Gurbet. Just very lucky to have met her. She's incredibly positive person, incredibly resilient person too. But she's always telling me, honey, like the gratitude practice and all that. But I didn't want to say like I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my all these things that I already know I have because it wasn't helping me, right? Because I am grateful for those things. I had to tune it into three things on a daily basis. Like I'm grateful I was able to get over the Venetian today without the bridge going up, so I made it on time as an example. Or I'm
Yeah.
grateful that I had a great conversation with an old friend. My roommate from college is an engineer for the Europa missions, and we just celebrated his launch, right? Like this is this huge undertaking for him. Working at JPL, grateful that I got to spend some time with him in California when I was there for the book, and just get to get like those very specific things, make it tangible goals that allow me to move forward through the day and just have a more positive outlook because the negative is there, the positive is there. I don't want to ignore the negative. I want to use that to move forward because I don't think negative is a bad thing to have, but just overcome it, right? And having the positive outlook, what I choose to focus on helps drive me on the day to day and not let me fall into a hole that it's hard to get out of, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a ton of sense, and I appreciate you sharing all of that. Now, Renz, we're on this topic of being grateful, positivity. Since this is the Thanksgiving Day episode, let's talk more about how we can focus. Like you said, you narrowed down to three things, really focused on what you're grateful. We just came out of a hurricane, so that shifted a whole lot for me in the morning. I'm not praying and being thankful for the obvious anymore. It's literally having a roof over my head. What can we do to find ourselves focusing on what's important in life? We all see these shiny objects everywhere. This time of year, it's really important. Give us some advice because you're doing great at it. I know how hard the adversity you faced, and everyone, that first episode, he talks a lot more about his past and all the challenges he had there. You'd be a great guy to answer this question.
Sure. I think it goes down to know thyself, right? Because it's hard to have an all-encompassing solution. I think it's the same way that medicine reacts differently in different people. We have different chemical compositions, right? We might be allergic to penicillin as an example. I think sometimes, for example, that overall general gratitude didn't work for me because of how I'm made up. So the important thing is to know yourself, what motivates you, what opportunities you have as a person. I was recently coaching someone and they were dealing with perfectionism as an example. I'm going to bring this back to the hurricane in a second. And I had to take a moment and apologize to them because they had understood me as me saying, "Hey, don't be a perfectionist. Focus on other things." I'm like, "No, it takes too much cognitive real estate and input to negate a part of who you are. But if you're a perfectionist, be a perfectionist in training other people to do the job and then step back and let them grow so that way you have an increased output, right?" And that worked. It's don't negate who you are, but use it when it's valuable to you. So when you are dealing with the adversity of a hurricane, something, and I think a hurricane is actually the perfect metaphor for what or allegory for what we're talking about because it's something you cannot control. That's an environmental factor that is completely outside of your hands. This is not like if I do more push-ups. This is not if I make more money. This is a hurricane is coming. Do you know yourself well enough to adapt efficiently to what you have in front of you? So I think the key thing is to know thyself, to be realistic with your expectations, and to be kind as you move forward in the trial and error phase. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to forgive yourself for not having control of everything. And in terms of the hurricane, we were very lucky in Florida. My friends in South Carolina, not so much, not so much on the West Coast of Florida. I'm in Miami, I'm in the East Coast. And dealing with the aftermath of that is also going to take resiliency and knowing yourself to see how you can better come out from
Um,
it, if that makes sense.
so well said. Yes, and we have to remember that life is not always going to be the highs and the sunny days, that there is going to be the challenging times, but how we respond to those challenging times is what ultimately is going to shape us. Renz, you're on fire. on this special episode today. As we continue to move forward and not be hard on ourselves, myself, recovering perfectionist, had a tough time letting go, ended up bringing on an assistant almost 2 years ago, helped me ease off of being okay with letting go with everything else. Let's talk more about that area. You brought it up and I thought it was perfect.
Sure, sure. It's so this person was just dealing with the fact that they felt overwhelmed with work. And at first we dealt with, okay, let's put everything down on paper and see it. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was that they were afraid to let go. They were afraid to let go and things happen because they could guarantee the quality of their work, but they were afraid to let that happen, to let that responsibility fall in the hands of other people and then be associated with that quality they had no control over. So it wasn't the symptom that we were dealing with at the beginning, right? We finally found the root cause. And when I mentioned that perfectionism can be the enemy of good enough, it can prevent you from moving forward. It can make it's paralysis, right? Like, I'm sorry, but I would love to have a pilot or a surgeon with high standards than a perfectionist, right? Because it's like, oh, I can't, I'm in the middle. Then what happens, right? So it really is about understanding that you can't control everything, but doing everything you can control to ensure an outcome and then just letting go and giving yourself space. Because even if it's not the outcome that you want, you're going to learn from it. You're going to get data back, right? If you want to just make it empirical, you're going to get data back. You're going to take it. You're going to put it back into the system. You know how capitalism is supposed to work. You take out from it, you put it back into the system, you reinvest, and you get closer and closer and closer to your intended outcome because perfection is something we will never attain. It does not exist. It will never exist. And I say this because I also am a recovering perfectionist, right? And disassociating my self-worth from outcomes is what has helped me. So I ask you, you said you brought in help, you started trusting other people, you let go a little bit. And in the last couple of months, I've seen your footprint expand almost exponentially. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh man, you're too kind. It's the little things for me where, okay, every day's preparation has to be in order or the next day won't succeed. I'm a big time blocker. Got my whiteboards here before bed every day, 3 a.m. typically to 3 p.m. Coincidentally, as we're recording now, I visualize exactly what I'm have going on. I'm barely on social and I know I need to be better, but email, social, nothing even gets checked, my cell phone messages until I start attacking those early morning tasks, staying focused and of course tuning out the noise. I've sacrificed much of my adult social life after age 27, which is fine, but it's been these years and years in the making to finally start making noise. As you talked beautifully about, piecing these little failures and learning experiences together to finally get it right. I'm doing all of these things more in the coaching side now because I didn't realize what I was doing really and the impact I could make. Now my biggest smile is a client's podcast episode comes out. Vince, we loved it. Coaching
Mhm.
clients getting that Amazon book in their hand, that author copy. Oh my God, I can't believe this was 2 years, a year, whatever it may be. That gives me more joy. And it's always nice to hear someone noticing, of course, that's not why you do it, but hearing that my impact is being made means a whole lot. So thank you for that. Partially what we're doing here on the show, always making time to keep this show going one a week. I think it was January 5th or 9th, maybe 7th. One of those odd days. The first show came out in 2020. And thanks to courageous guests like Renz today, who keep coming on the show, sharing their stories, preventing me from solo episodes, which I love. I couldn't be more thankful. Let's now shift into more advice since this is a Thanksgiving episode. Someone's having a really bad time this holiday season, maybe first Thanksgiving without a loved one, maybe without a job, something. Can you give them some advice to remember that today's a different type of day and hopefully it sets momentum going forward?
Sure. I mean, as we've discussed before, I lost my father in 2020, and I've had a lot of Thanksgivings without him since then. I mean, I could just direct you to anything Andrew Garfield says on grief. He's been going viral on that. But it truly is remembering that they're a part of you, remembering that the person you are, if you have someone that you care about that's no longer with you, whether they're alive or not, there's a falling out that you may not even remember the reasons for now, right? Like sometimes you just remember the feeling you had and not the reasons aren't important anymore. Eh, I think knowing that part of that who you are is a result of the relationships you've had and the impact they've had on you makes it easier to feel them next to you and still in your life. Because look, whether it's metaphysical or whether it's like they're alive or dead or the spirit, whatever you want to call it, as long as you're alive, they're alive. And be grateful for that. That's what I'm grateful for every day. Like I had a, like I have conversations with my dad to this day without having conversations. Like in my mind, I just shortcut it. I'd be like, Dad, I don't know. I can't find a job and I'm supposed to be good at this. And he's like, did you pray hard enough? Have you prayed hard? Like I know exactly what he would tell me. No, Dad, I didn't pray hard enough. Well, you should pray hard enough. And in that, I just
Yeah.
crack up and I laugh and I feel his presence. I feel my grandmother's presence. The other day, I cleared out some files and I found my grandmother's poems that she wrote to me when I was a kid because she always talked to me like I was older. I found her CV where she was a finalist in an international singing competition in Rio in like the 50s. Like it was this crazy
Wow.
thing. And just remembering that my love of opera comes from her, right? Because she was an opera singer. My grandfather, his love of dressing well is all the suits that are in that closet. It's just there with me at all times. So if you are feeling alone, if you are feeling disconnected from the people who are no longer here, know that they're part of you. And if there are others that you feel disconnected from that are still alive, they're only a phone call away. They're only a visit away. And I am sure that despite maybe some tension because of the distance, they'll be glad to hear from you too if you really want to connect with them. As long as you're alive, as long as you're breathing, you can change your stars. You know what I
I
mean?
I love that. I try to do my best to keep in touch with people over the years. It gets harder and harder when everybody goes their separate ways. There's no hard feelings, but that's just how life goes. I'm right on the same page of you. Couldn't have a better guest today for a very special episode. Renz, where can our guests connect with you online? And of course, where can we check out this book?
Sure. You can find me at www.renzodelcastillo.com. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, I TikTok now. You
All
can find
right.
me on Instagram and TikTok at renzodelcastillo.author.com. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name. You can find me on Facebook under my name. Still is available on at Barnes and Noble, on Amazon. You can buy the hardcover, the paperback. The Kindle edition is 99 cents and it will always be 99 cents because art should be accessible and inclusive. So I couldn't make it free, but it's 99 cents and I'm not planning on changing that. And the audiobook is also available on Audible.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. There's a version for you, and I love the Audible and audiobook note there. I'm in the process of recording my second one now. I am not an audiobook guy, and I'm not like the masses in many ways, and I neglected this for too long. So thank you for putting that audiobook out there. I know people listening on, that might be the medium for them. Be sure to check out the show every week, A Mental Health Break, and give the show a rating and a comment. Let today's guest know how great he was. I'm at Vincent A. Lancy on all social, and to learn more about me is vincentalancy.com. Today's show is brought to you by Coming Alive Podcast Production. Head to the link in bio to get your podcast started today. But with that, we are signing off from the East Coast of Florida across the state today. Renz, thanks for catching up.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And if I just may take 1 second, I just want to make sure that your audience knows when I met Vince, he was going to coach me on a book that was already written. And we chatted, and I told him that I was nervous about upcoming podcast appearances, and he immediately, without hesitating, said, "Come on my podcast. Get your seafaring legs in, like get the cobwebs out. Let's do it here." And I just want, for those who listen to the show, they probably already know this, but I think it's worth restating. This is the type of person Vince is. Vince, you are. So I hope there are more Vinces out there in the world. We need them. So thank you, Vince, for your platform and for your kindness as always.
Thanks for the kind words. It's heartwarming to always get a authentic recommendation, referral from someone. Everyone out there, I hope you see the passion I bring to you each and every week. I promise I'm not always alert and happy like I may seem. Everyone who knows me knows my days are starting at 3:30 in the morning, but just clicking the record button pushes all this energy into me. There's a reason I host these shows and I don't sell out to the other places as they've grown because that would defeat the mission if I did that on all the shows. A mental health break here to stay. with impactful conversations each week. Renz, thank you so much again.
Thank you, brother.